Hello everyone. This presentation is for understanding the Selenium locators. For working with Selenium, we should be able to understand what a locator is. The WebDriver should be able to identify the web elements on the page. And what are these web elements? These can be a text box, a button, a radio button, checkbox, label, dropdown, any GUI element on the web page can be identified using these locators. Locating these elements can be very tricky at times, and at the same time, it's the most critical part to go forward with the automation. So let's talk about what are the different types of locators. As you can see from the list, there are so many locators: ID, name, tag name, link text, partial link text, class name, CSS, Xpath, and there is also something known as relative locators. Yeah, we'll talk about them later. For now, IDs are the best and fastest to go with. They are unique identifiers and are the most reliable, but not all elements have IDs, so you may have to go to other locators. Name is the second best alternative, but only if it is unique. Unlike IDs, many elements on the page can have same names, so you have to make sure it's unique. In fact, for all the locators, you have to make sure it's unique. Then only you'll be able to locate them. Otherwise, it will just jump onto the first find of it, and it will try to interact with that element. So each tag in the DOM has different attributes like IDs, names, class names, etc. And you can use them to locate the elements. To understand link text and partial link text, you should know about the anchor tags. The starting A and closing A tags are the anchor tags, and they are usually used for defining some hyperlinks on the page. You may mix up the string to pass in as the value for the link text here. Sometimes we try to use https www.demoqa.com, but please, that's not the link text. The link text here is home. So yeah, so it will be like driver.findElement by link text home. Now imagine that instead of home, it was home 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, blah, blah, blah. Now you don't want to pass in the whole string. So you can use partial link text, and you can say driver.findElement by partial link text home. And you don't have to pass that whole weird string that I just said. So moving on to next, not all elements can be found using the attributes that I just mentioned. So you can use CS and Xpath. Using these, you can locate any element. It's just that it can be very tricky. It might not be very straightforward. And I already mentioned about the syntax. So it will be, for all these, it will be the same. Driver.findElement by ID, by name, by tag name, by link text, by CSS. Yeah, the syntax is just the same. And now let's talk about what are the relative locators. Relative locators are friendly locators. They are available in Selenium 4, and currently we have 5 available relative locators: above, below, to left of, to right of, near. The concept is basically, if you know one element, you should be able to find the other element based on that. For example, in this screenshot, you can see there is a text box, search articles, and then there is this magnifying glass icon, right? And for some reason, say you're not able to locate this element, and you know this element, search articles text box. So how will you find this icon based on this text box? So we will say driver.findElement with tag name span, because this magnifying glass icon has the tag name span. So I'm trying to locate an element which has the tag span and is to the right of this text box. So find element with tag name span to the right of this text box, search articles, and I'm trying to click it. So this is how relative locators work, but we'll talk about this more in another tutorial. Now, next is, what are the different challenges that you that you face while locating these elements. First of all, not all elements are unique. They can be dynamic. What do I mean? Suppose I am trying to locate a button, and when I loaded the page, its ID was 123. Now, for some reason, the page refreshes or you do some action and the page loads again, and now the ID changes to 456, and the third time is 789. What will you do in this scenario? Because the ID is not static. If you try to locate the element with ID 123, it is not at all absolute that when you are actually running the test at that time the ID is 123. So you cannot use the ID. So unique is not enough. It should not be dynamic. Also, with React components coming in picture, a lot of elements, a lot of element reusability theory is popping up, and it becomes even more difficult to differentiate between similar elements on a page. If you overcome these issues, then the next problem comes with storing and maintaining them in a framework. You may also encounter issues like stale element, element not found, element is there but it's not visible. But these are like other problems. Here we're talking about what are the challenges you are facing when you're trying to locate these elements. Whatever the problem is, you should be able to resolve it using CSS and Xpath. You just have to know how to do that. So what are the tips and tricks I follow to locate the elements? You can, first of all, you don't have to learn everything by heart. So Googling everything now and then is just fine. I have mentioned 2 cheat sheets in my video description, which I usually follow, and 99.999% of your cases will be resolved using that. Another thing, there are many tools available online like Firepath, CrookPath, etc. etc. They're not very helpful though. You just have to launch your browser, open the website under test, launch DevTools, do a Control F to open search, and start typing. It's that easy. So I can actually give you a small demo how it looks. So if you see here, this is a Facebook page. So as I said, I launched the browser, opened the website under test, I inspect it, I launch the DevTools, click here, do a Control F. See, the search is open. Now suppose I'm trying to locate an element, email text box. Here I can see it has an input tag, it has an ID, a name, a data test ID, a placeholder, area label. You can use any of these attributes to locate the element. Now, for example, I'm trying to locate the element using data test ID and using Xpath. So I'll start with a double slash. Double slash denotes relative Xpath. You can also use an absolute Xpath, but that will just start typing everything from HTML. So relative Xpaths are easier. So I can just directly jump on to input, and in here I can say I want to find the input tag that has the attribute data test ID. So you see, like, I pass in the attribute with the help of @ and my data test ID is royal email. Wow, it's really dry. So royal email. Here I'm able to locate this element. Now, what if I don't want to pass in the whole string here? I can use a method contains. So I can say I want to find the input tag that contains the data test ID with some substring royal email. See? And I can just pass in. Oh, sorry. I'll have to type it again. So input contains data test ID is, Oh, I can actually do it just with email. Wrong quotes. Now it works. See, I can do that. Now, for example, just imagine you are trying to locate password. Okay, first step. Suppose for some reason you need the parent of this element. I cannot find it with the class because it's very random number. It may be different every time I launch. So, but I can find this input tag. So what I'll do, I do a slash and do a 2 dot that takes me one parent above. So I got the parent of input tag. And suppose now I want to go one more level up, and then I want to come to the sibling of the email text box. So there are two divs, right? We use the first one, this is the second one, so div 2. And here again there is a div here, as you see here it's a div and then it's an input. I can either do a div and an input, or I can use the relative and say, div input like this. So you can obviously just find it by name pass, by ID pass, or by Xpath data test ID royal pass. I'm just trying to explain how you can traverse through the DOM using Xpath. Again, if you want to locate this button, you can use name, data test ID, whatever. But another thing that Xpath provides is the text function. So I can say button whose text is login. And with the text function, I can also use the contains function. So I say contains text login, right? This also works. Now we can move to CSS. So for CSS, suppose I try to find this input text box again for email. I don't have to pass in any double slash or anything. I can just write in the tag. Then there was a div. Oh, sorry. And then inside the input, oh, there's nothing. So suppose I am trying to do a div first, and I don't have to pass in the slash. I can just do a space input. And then here I can say input whose data test ID is royal email. Here I don't have to pass in @ for the attribute. I don't have to pass in the slashes in between. It should work like this. Again, suppose you don't want to pass in the whole string. What do? I can say with the star that I'm passing a substring. Maybe like this, right? Or I can say I want to have a data test ID that is ending with email. Or I can say I want to have a data test ID starting with royal. But in that case, I have two now because it is royal email and this is royal password. But yeah, that's it. Again, in here, I cannot use the text function like we did in Xpath for getting the login button. In Xpath, I was able to traverse from parent to child and child to parent using ... but in CSS, you can traverse from parent to child, but you cannot go from child to parent. That's another limitation. So talking about limitations, we can go back to our slides and talk about CSS versus Xpath. There's always an ongoing debate what's better. CSS has better performance and speed than Xpath, but Xpath allows locating elements by text. CSS does not. Xpaths can be relative and absolute, and CSS has no such types. Xpath allows bidirectional flow like parent to child and child to parent, but CSS has only one, parent to child. Talking about all these, to be true, the difference between performance is very micro level. If you're using the correct locators, you should be good. There's not much difference. Yeah, and I'm hoping this video will help you. Please use the cheat sheets that I mentioned in the video description. They are very helpful. Also post questions and suggestions, if any, in the comments. I will be happy to help and answer. Thank you.